I picked up this belief when I was X number of years, and I can see how it's played out in my life today, my presenting problem today. I can see how this is connected. And people think that you're going to go back and you're going to relive the pain. It's not reliving the pain, but you are reviewing it.
Hi, Wajeeha. Welcome to the Oxford Talks podcast. Good to be here. And for those of us who have not seen your work, what is it that you do?
Thank you, Walid, for having me here. I help people reset. And what I mean by that is we were not born not feeling enough. We were not born having to self-sabotage ourselves or having imposter syndrome or having this negative self-talk. Those are stuff that we kind of acquired as we progressed through life. And I basically help people to reset to how they were meant to be when the way we were born. We all were born with having, like, when was the last time you saw a 2-year-old on a plane have an issue of public speaking? We didn't have that. You spoke the way you wanted to speak without a fear of being judged. So that's what I help people do, get back to who they were meant to be.
That's really amazing. So you help people reset back to originality, I guess back to when they were children. Why is it that necessary? And why do you think you are the right person to do this job?
I feel we're each born with an identity of who we are. And over time, we crumple up into what maybe our parents or our caregivers or the society at large expect from us. And we start crumpling and crumpling and crumpling into a version that was never ours. Nothing of it was actually what I wanted to do or who I am. And until you actually get back to who you're meant to be, I find that's when you find your purpose. People will come to me sometimes saying they don't know what their purpose is. And it's because there's so many stuff from the outside that has been layered on top of them that they can't figure it out. Um, so I find it's important because who you're meant to be and knowing your self-worth plays into every aspect of your life, from how you do at school, who you make friends with, what schools you apply for, what jobs you apply for, or even asking for a raise plays into your self-worth, or even the partner you choose comes into knowing your self-worth. I know if someone knows their self-worth, they would act differently. They would choose differently for themselves.
And how would one know about this self? Is there like a method to it or like a calculated way you can reach there?
So I'm an RTT hypnotherapist. RTT meaning Rapid Transformational Therapy. And it's basically about going back to the person's, regressing them back to their childhood. And usually people have formed their beliefs in that certain time. Before you've hit the age of 7, you've already formed a belief about who you are.
Yeah.
And it can be as when you're still unborn in your mother's womb, you can pick up, because the first thing that develops of a fetus is the hearing ability. So that fetus can hear if they were unwanted, or the mother is going through some crisis, or the father doesn't want the child, or there is whatever trauma may be happening. That little unborn child can hear it, and it does play an effect on who they become.
So you're saying that, well, I've heard these like folklores that when women are pregnant, they do this. They put pictures of very like cute babies, so they're like, oh, the babies which are gonna be born are gonna be cute as well, and they play like nice music, and because they'll be like, oh, it's great for the kids. So you're saying like all of those things are actually true, but I suppose like there's no hard scientific evidence to those things. But
The,
do you reckon they play part in who you are as a person, even when you're like in your mother's womb?
If the child can hear the mother and the father, whoever, speaking, saying that this child is unwanted, this pregnancy was a mistake,
Mm.
the child can feel it and they can hear it. And they don't hear the words, they can't decipher words at that stage, but they certainly can pick up on the attunement of the mother. And they can pick up on, because you're already connected to the mother, so you already understand from the senses, the sensitivity of that child. Am I wanted or am I not wanted? Am I a mistake? And that's just, some people will have it. Maybe they will have it when they're unborn, or even when they were just born, from months to weeks to years. You know, people think that kids don't understand the language, so it's okay to speak in front of them. Kids pick up.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
They pick up. And sometimes I may not even, like, I had gone through an RTT session as soon as I became a therapist, just to understand what my limiting beliefs were.
Yeah.
And I had regressed back to a scene where I was constantly, my presenting problem was I'm constantly second guessing myself, or I'll self-sabotage myself. And it went back to a scene when I was about 4. And at the time, we lived in Paris. And I guess it was normal for parents to leave their kids in the toy departments of big department stores.
Yes. Yeah.
And you would just leave the kids there and you would go shopping within the department store. And that stores used to have one of each toy open. So kids would kind of just play while the parents shopped. And so my mom left me there and she was shopping. And then a couple came and they held me by my hand and they were taking me away. I didn't think much of it. And I was going with this couple.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, for a 4-year-old, there's a lot of commotion and there's noise going on. And then I see my mom speaking to what looked like a security guard. And the security guard and the staff people of that store told my mom she didn't cry. So we thought it was normal. Had she made a commotion that this is not my parents, why am I going, like they're taking me away?
So they were literally abducting you
Yeah.
in Paris when you're
And
4-year-old.
yeah. And what did I pick up from that? Why didn't I cry? If I didn't cry, that must mean I'm not smart enough.
When did your parents tell you this story like later in your life then? Because would you remember like being 4-year-old and having going through that?
You go and you can remember certain things because your subconscious takes a snapshot. Consciously, I didn't even think of it. But your subconscious throughout your life has already taken a snapshot of stuff and it's kept it in the back. And when you are regressed back into hypnotherapy, and your subconscious will take you directly to a scene that where you first form the belief of either I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, it's not available to me, or I'm different. And usually people will fall into these 3 categories. My belief of not being smart enough played into so many other aspects of my life. So when I was able to understand that, and so the root cause of this, and how it actually is playing into my life today, I'm now able to connect the dots and understand I did all of these things because I had this belief. And the moment you have an awareness, awareness is like the first step to freedom. I'm now able to catch myself thinking, oh, wait a minute, there you are again. That same thought. I know what you're doing, but now I have the awareness and I can flip it.
It's like having an inner voice in your head who tells you. So does this happen when you went through the session, and then that's how you remember the 4-year-old story?
My mom would say that, you know what, I had heard the story growing up that you were nearly kidnapped. You were nearly abducted.
Did the mom
But
loved you after more after that? Oh, my little baby. I
I
almost
don't
lost
know.
you there.
Yeah. But I feel like the details, and you know what? When you're a child, it may not have even been played out as such. But as a child, that's what I understood. That's the belief I took. It may not have been completely true, but the fact of the matter is that that child made that the reality.
Mhm.
And then, like, I've heard of a colleague's client where the child remembers the mom leaving,
Leaving as
like she was going away. Like the mom came, gave her a hug, whatever, and she left. And she grew up. This girl grew up believing that she was not good enough. Hence the reason the mother left her.
oh, she populated that idea in her head then.
Yes, the mother left her because she was not good enough. Only to find out later, but she had already picked up that belief. So she led life through, only to find out later that her mother left because she needed to. She needed treatment. But that kid, her reality was, I'm not good enough, or this must be something wrong with me for her to take a break or leave.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You may not think it's logical, but it's what a 5-year-old or a
Would
4-year
make
old
yeah.
picks up.
And that's so remarkable. And you're very right that we do go, unless we do actively that kind of a soul search, you might be living 3/4 of your life and with that belief, and then you realize the how much sabotaging that belief can be, again, as you said, that at your work, at picking up your partner every day.
Yeah.
And so walk me through what happens during like a session. Like, let's say I have a friend who might even not know that they have this problem, and this is me working with them, realizing they have this problem, that I kind of always undersell them, and then I direct them to you. Walk me through the process of what would you do? What does a session look like with you?
So we usually will have a discovery call, just to see if we are a good match, to understand if this is within my scope of practice.
And what does
Otherwise,
that scope means? Like, how big
so,
is?
so if someone is coming to me with PTSD,
Mhm.
and maybe I feel like I'm not the best person for this, I will then have a conversation and then maybe refer them to a colleague who I know specializes in PTSD. So we do have like a group of colleagues who either specializes in something that we kind of refer our client to, or if it's someone that I know that I can help and it's within my scope of practice and I know I've done these cases, or even if I know that I can help this person, then we go forward from the discovery call into a intake form. This is when the client will receive an extensive questionnaire asking them about what are the presenting problems. And usually they'll have to check from, and they're categorized. So they will check from work life, then financial, then relationships, then what they believe about themselves. And usually you'll see like there's a lot of checks. And then we'll ask a bit about any medications that they're on, if they've ever been hypnotized before, and how was that a good experience, or what was the experience of that? And then we'll ask if there's if they're on any medications.
Vijay, before you move forward, I'm going to ask you. We talked about this before as well. That it's not the hypnotherapy that we've seen in TV, right? Or like in the cartoons that you don't wave a
No,
pendulum in front of people and then they just suddenly say
no,
everything that you want to know.
no.
It's not
I know
that.
it's such a dramatic. Like when you see people, I've met someone on the train, and I said, "Oh, I'm a hypnotherapist," and then he looked at me like, "Are you hypnotizing me right now to like go rob a
It's
bank?" I'm
like
like,
some magic
"No,
power you have.
no, it doesn't work that way." Um, People have this idea that hypnosis is some woo-woo thing, but it's really just a trance. It's a very natural state. So if you're watching a movie, or if you go to a theater and you see people eating their popcorn and they're watching the screen, And all you see them do is this movement of putting popcorn in their mouth and they're watching that screen, they're in a trance.
Oh, I see.
It's a very natural trance. Or if you're driving home and you don't even realize how you got home because you know it's right, left, whatever it is, and you get home. You're on an automatic mode of, I know I need to take a right on this street, take a left on this
Like a
street.
subconscious.
Yeah. Or when you walk into the room and you already know where the light switch is. You're not consciously having to see where is the light switch. You already automatically do it. That's your subconscious just doing things because we operate 99% from our
Yeah.
subconscious mind. So all it is just get putting your conscious mind aside and speaking to your subconscious mind.
Amazing. So, yeah, I see I see where you're coming from, and yeah, that makes total sense. That even when you at night and you just have to suddenly go to kitchen, it's pitch dark. You just know where the buttons are because your brain is just trained to. So a person comes to you, so you do like a discovery call. There's an early diagnosis.
Mhm.
If it's something you can help them, or you refer it to your colleagues, they sign a questionnaire, and let's say they fit in all in the category of your expertise. What happens after that?
Then we book in an actual session.
Is
So
it like live or on Zoom or?
I do it on both live, in person, or Zoom. If it's a client that's not in London, then we're doing it on Zoom. Otherwise, my London clients decide if they want to do it in person or not. Um, and then when we book in the session, this is about a 2.5 hours. So when I look at the presenting problems and they've checked like 10, 20 different boxes of what the presenting problems are, I would ask the client to choose the top three that they want to work on. And usually, when you go and you reset one of the problems, usually the little sub ones underneath will get fixed.
Yeah, would you help the audience understand a bit better by perhaps giving an anonymous example of something you've already done and maybe something recent so they have a bit more understanding of like that part of the session?
So I had a client who checked off addiction, alcohol addiction. She checked off, that was in one category. Then she checked off financial, checked off relationships, cannot hold any relationships for a prolonged period of time. And then she checked off, for her childhood, she had checked off issues with parents, particularly her mother, and challenges with holding any kind of relationship with anyone. So she wasn't even able to maintain friendships. From that, I asked her to choose what was, if I had a magic wand, and I could tell you I could fix the top three things, what
Yeah.
would you pick? And she asked to pick the feeling of being safe. That was one of her. Um,
Mm.
it wasn't, the checkbox doesn't say, I want to feel safe. When I asked her what was the top three, she said, I want to feel safe.
And you don't tell her that you have something that you are writing and you
Oh,
just,
no, I'm writing in front of her. I
okay.
ask for permission to have, because it's confidential. So whatever she tells me stays within.
Yeah, of course.
And I am taking notes. And if there ever comes a time when she feels like she wants to see the notes, she gets to see it. Or if she asks me to destroy them, then I destroy them. But there are session notes. I'm writing as she's,
Yeah.
any ear prick up moments that she tells me, I will think that I know that I may want to come back to during the session. I'll write it down. So she had put her main problem as not feeling safe. But then all of that was just other check marks of, can't keep a job, can't do this, can't do that. Okay. So when she picked that, when I regressed her back, I actually to go to a scene when she first felt the feeling of this not being safe. When was the first instant? And usually the subconscious will go back to scenes that kind of build up. And with my clients, I've found that usually the first scene is not, maybe sometimes a happy moment. And then when we go back to a second scene, it may be something a bit more deeper. And then third or fourth scene is it. The subconscious has gone straight down to a scene when she was, she's saying that she was in a hospital room, and I guess this is the time when all the babies were kept in the same, like a nursery. Now they no longer do that,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
That's next to the
Mhm.
mother. And her aunts had come to see her, but they saw a baby next to her. And they all started looking at the other baby because the other baby was cuter. And
Oh
all of a
wow.
sudden she felt,
Rejected.
I'm rejected. I'm not the people who I'm meant to be connecting with. I'm not getting, because when the child comes out, they're still in that growth stage. When you come out, like as mammals, we're the ones that take the longest for our brains to develop. So I'm still depending on the people who are meant to be keeping me safe for them to keep me safe. She picked, that was one of her scenes where no, she didn't get any attention.
But how on earth she remembers that?
See, it's not a, it's a feeling that she picked up. It's a feeling that when, instead of looking at her and the baby talk and they're smiling and they're doing this and all of that, they looked at her. Then one of them turned around to say, "Oh my God, look at this one!" And then they all turned around. So then all of a sudden, she got no one looking at her. And for a
Yeah.
baby, their way of communication is looking at the eyes, and they can pick up. They can almost pick up what is being faked because their understanding of language is through their senses. And if they're looking at the eyes of their mother and the mother's eyes are not dilated, they know there's no attunement there.
Wow, that I believe all of that. I 100%. I think that is exactly how it goes with children. I'm struggling to comprehend how an adult will remember. This is kind of like day 1, 2, 3, 7 moment of your life.
But you're not,
Do you think it's because it's the memories populated by her mother telling her that?
to be honest, it can be a mixture of anything. It can be me feeling less of. I didn't have words, but I had the feeling that you were not giving me any attention. And that's not a very nice feeling.
Yeah.
And what does that baby then pick up as a belief? There must be something wrong with me. There must be something in me that I'm not getting the attention.
And so in your practice, people have gone back literally to like being in the cart that was just being born.
There have been people who were babies. We're talking about just under a year, so they were not walking as yet. And then I've had clients who were toddlers. And then, so mine has been usually below the age of 7, and then
Yeah.
some before their teens.
What would the percentage? Would you go like most people go? Because I remember talking to you, I'm giving myself a challenge in my head. Like, can you remember the earliest memory of your life? And I'm really struggling. I don't think I can go back maybe beyond maybe when I was 4 year old or maybe 5 or 6. I remember like and again, you're very right that I have snapshots of that. It feels
Mhm.
like it's a picture. It's not like a moving image. My recent memories of moving things, like I went here and I did this, that, and that. But it feels like a picture, like a static picture of me being in the class, like the very first day, that kind of feeling.
Okay.
But it's so vague. But I'm thinking that putting myself in your client's shoes and kind of at the same time being an audience, that the in the session it is like kind of a reductionist approach going on. And do you always go towards childhood, or do the questions you ask they lead towards childhood, or people come to you already kind of bit of self-diagnosed that I know what the problem is, or you lead them through that?
So I'm a facilitator.
Okay.
So I can't lead a client to something that's not already their truth. So I will usually, when we regress, it's going with the feeling. When you have an interaction now and you act really weirdly out of control and you think that was not, that was like a 4, but I acted as if it was a 10. That's not because of the current situation. That's coming back to a feeling that this current situation brought you back to somewhere in the past that made you feel, I don't know, a person comes in, like my plumber comes in and he can't fix it, but he came really late. And I'm annoyed at the plumber.
For being late, yeah.
But wait a minute. Yeah, he was late. But the way I'm acting really out of control or my anger shot up, that's coming from somewhere else. That's coming from someone didn't value you and you got that same, value your time or value you as a person, that you got that same feeling. And that same feeling just came back to the part where the plumber didn't show up on time and you acted. You acted from a feeling, a familiar feeling from the past. Do you know what I mean?
I totally get it. I think I'm, and again, as being everyone is like, you always look within you. And as I'm listening to you, I'm immediately thinking like, where are those moments where I might have acted in the way it looked like something else, but there
Mhm.
was definitely something else going on. And I think, if anything, even in my personal life, the arc, it does go that everyone tells me like, oh, I have this like, oh, you have just high standards of like doing things, and I just can't place like a reason that, for me, it doesn't feel like I'm putting an effort into a high standard. But the team that I work with, the Docs Who Talks and all the other things, that they certainly feel like it's pushed up, that they feel like, oh, we have to do it at least at this level. So for them it's an effort to do that, and for me it's like, it's just a way to do that. But I'm putting myself in your, so in your in your client's shoes, that if you were to ask me that, why is that, how would you lead me to, because I genuinely do not know what the reason is behind that, like why. For example, I would not like have to have, I'm pointing, for listeners, I'm pointing at the coffee mug and the water bottle on the table. I specifically picked those black colors. I do not want the one to look transparent. I don't want the dangly things on the side, the hooks and all of that. I just want it to be clean. But when me picking it, it was like a 2-minute decision. Oh yeah, that's it, that done. But I don't know why I did not like the other thing. Can you help me maybe pinpoint why is that?
Let me ask you a question. Do you feel validated or fulfilled when you excel?
Oh yeah, of course.
And is that been something that has always been with you? That feeling of needing to excel in order to get validation?
Um, I think I
Like
think
what that
it's
feeling that you have, that if I don't do this, then I'm going to feel something. What is that something?
I would say it's the kind of like borderline OCD kicks in, that I can't place what it is, but I like things to be, I think, more or less, I think it's my personal thing. When someone likes it, I would just do it more and more along the way. So it's a positive feedback loop to like, okay, more of this, please. But even leading up to that, I would just keep on doing things for my own satisfaction. And for listeners and viewers, you both won't be able to sort of guess this, but Avijia, before we walked in, we were talking about the plants and everything. I specifically picked these two right here, and no one asked me to. We had other plants for the ones you can see the previous shows. We had other plants that were perfectly fine. But I specifically picked these, and I specifically picked those colors, and I was like, you know what? It will just look nice. But if someone, or you might have come today and be like, oh my God, such great plants. I'm going to buy 4 more of these. And maybe put two here, put two there, put two there. So I know that. I think that's definitely with the positive feedback and validation kicks in. But I don't know why that part happened in the first place. And that is, I but just don't know.
But what is it if you don't get the validation? What does that make you feel? What does it mean if Willie
Yeah,
doesn't get the validation?
I would eventually stop doing it. Eventually, not immediately though.
Because,
Because again, yeah, the validation was not. Again, I'm very
but what does it
receptive.
mean if, say, Willie went and did accomplish something,
Yes.
and or even maybe even worked hard, accomplished something, and then doesn't receive or hear the words he needs to hear?
Yeah.
What would that what would that meaning that you would put on yourself be?
I should give it a thought. I have a very good answer for you. So for a very long time, that meant the end of that thing, or that meant that it might be wrong. But I think I would say for the last 2 3 years, uh, it actually, I swear to God, it doesn't register as anything now. Reason being the work that we do and all of that. Um, you just have to put yourself in someone else's shoes that they might not be in the right state to give feedback, and it can be one person, it can be masses. You produce a talk or do something and hasn't performed well as you would like it to do. There are millions of factors that can kick in that you just even don't know of. So I've accepted that reality that of my ignorance, that there's thousand other ways that I don't know of, and I get back into like kind of routine of things. Let's just keep on going, and let's keep on informing ourselves of more of those things that we were ignorant of them before. So I
Okay.
immediately fall back into that process. But you're very right. 3 years ago, it was the case of self worth, not at like the deeper level of maybe I'm useless, but at the top level, you know what, I might not be doing a great job, something we were just talking about. So but I've come over it, reason being that I had to, otherwise I think one should really study the journeys of entrepreneurship. At uni we had to study quite like the literature of all these things, not the business kind of it, like literally the entrepreneurship. But
Mhm.
they have to be an insane person to do things in life, seriously, in that kind of entrepreneurial world. Like no one has any idea, and especially like I'm talking about really like the inventors, like the light bulb. Life is going perfectly fine with the candles, but you know what, let's bring electricity, let's have lights and all of that. Thousand failed attempts, and they still keep on going, still keep on going. So I feel like that part of you failing and leading up to a success, before that, process involved other people, I think. But recently is I have just kicked out everyone from there. You do take feedback, and if someone say, and again, you at the end of it, I mean, everyone has to, you're doing things, then they are for other people one way or the other. You're trying to impress your parents or your family or something like that. That's very immediate, like, oh, my mom would be proud of what I'm doing, and my team would be proud of I'm accomplishing these things. But I think recently I realized that they are a great hindrance as well.
Yes, they are.
So to give a kind of summarize of it, that part of it, self-worth does gets challenged, depends on the day. But now I have kind of like frameworks, and I don't get self-worth involved in any of it, or external praise involved. It happens really good. If it doesn't, let's go back to the process to identify why it didn't happen. But I keep myself out of it a lot of times.
So this is in your career.
Was that, sorry?
So this is your work life that
Yes,
you've
yes.
managed to.
Create a framework out
Yes.
of it, yeah.
What about the other categories of your life?
I'll be very honest. I think a lot of my life had been I don't know. There's always something going on at any given point, and I really never felt that. I highly doubt that I have a huge kind of like a personal life. I don't have like a morning routine. I don't have like evening routines. Like I'd really follow that, and God's like everything can go up and down, but I'm gonna follow my diet and all of that. I think that is its personal life is very arbitrary. There's some parts of it which are my family, my friends, my partners, and all of that. Like it's very set in stone, and I'm happy for all of that. But I don't know. I just don't recollect a lot of memories of it. That every time, every moment in my life, every year, even as a child, there was a theme of that year that was going on, and it was more to do with external thing. So my personal was just adjusted to whatever that was. So I It's like my identity is that has become work.
I know, but that's sad.
I like it. I love what I do, so I'm
But
happy
what
with it.
happens if work is not there? Then who's will lead?
Then that would be so that's I'm glad you picked that up. That would be a big challenge for me then.
Because
I personally don't have anything. Like I don't know. I there's a golf set in the studio, but the other guests they arrived at. Like, oh, you play golf? I did play once in a while, but I don't go and all of that. I don't do all of that because I generally take happiness. I see what you're doing here, and I think you are getting somewhere. Yeah, my identity is attached to my work actually.
so that means I read one of the first things when I was going for personal development that came up was if I put up, I've had challenges with fertility. And I used to think that if I had a child, I'd feel better. If only I had this going, I would feel better. And then I read one of Marissa Peer's book, and she said, well, hold on a minute. If you put something outside of yourself and you give them the key to your happiness, you've equally given them the key to your sadness.
Yes.
Right. And I'm like, oh, hold on a minute. No, no, no. This child cannot have all my happiness. And if the child, if God forbid, does not work out, then that means my sadness and that's my life. For the rest of my life, I'm going to be sad. That cannot be. And I refuse for it to be that. And that's when I started taking back my power. Like I have said, when I get this job, I'll be happy. Or when
Mm.
things get better in relationships with certain people in my life, I'll be happier. Or when this thing or whatever it is gets better, or it makes more money, or everything was outside. And I was weighing my happiness on external factors that I had zero control on. And then when it didn't work out, they took away my happiness. I'm like, this cannot be life. It and it took me a long time to actually disassociate myself from giving people the key to my happiness
That's so powerful. How does one do that?
by getting your self-worth. When you have your self-worth, I myself inside can be happy and I don't need you to make me happy. And this was a pretty harsh conversation because I said this in front of my mother-in-law about my husband. I'm like, I do not need him to make me happy. He adds to my happiness. But I'm not some 50% and he's another 50% to make me a whole. Then what does that make me? A half person? No. And she's like, no, obviously it was not a conversation that went well because it felt like you're being selfish. But I'm like, he shouldn't need me to make him happy. I add to his happiness, but he needs to be whole as a
Yeah.
person, and I need to be whole as a person. And then, yes, when we come together, we are happiness of both of ours, 100%, 200% coming together to build a life and walk alongside. But because then I'm always going to need from him. And when he can't provide, I'm going to feel inadequate. And then I'm blaming him. Or the vice versa. He's expecting from me and I'm not doing it. Then what does that mean? You're not going to be happy?
But yeah, in relationships, I mean, we can appreciate that it's always like he will be happy one day 80% and you will be might down to 20.
Yeah.
And it's always that kind of like equilibrium you have to do
Of
that.
course, totally. Like sometimes, like I heard this from Mel Robbins, I think, where, hey, I'll come to Najib sometimes and I'll tell him, listen, I only have 10%. I only have 10% today. So the remaining, you're going to have to put in. But that's that day, or that's that moment, or that phase that I'm going through. But I don't need him to pour into me to make me happy again. For me to be
Mm.
happy again, that's my own, for me at least, in my experience, it's been, that's my solo journey. Am I doing what I want to do? And am I fulfilling that purpose? And who is Wajeeha and what is it that she's doing on a day to day basis? Is she getting to where she wants to be? but I cannot rely on someone else to make me happy. I can help get people to help me advance me on certain things, but all of those are external. My internal is only my control and mine alone. So I can't even rely on my parents or my siblings or my partner to fill that.
But what would you say for a time? And this is like an external. I'm pretty sure some member in the audience might be going through that. You put the sort of denominator of time on this, percentages. But what if someone is consistently 10% and it's 6 months, 8 months? What would you do then? Do you think that's a problem, or how would you sort of go about that situation?
I feel everyone needs therapy. And if you're consistently lower 10%, 15%, whatever it may be, that's not you. Something else is playing there.
Mm.
And the more prolonged it is, the more you're sitting in pain when you don't need to sit in emotional pain. And sometimes I feel it when I see people living in emotional pain because they believe that's how their life is meant to be. It pains me to realize that you don't. No one should be living in emotional pain, but I know so many people are. And I feel like if only you could seek help to gain the awareness and start turning that mind. Because our mind will either pull us back to some past misery and keep us in there, or it will pull us forward to some not happened disaster, but we're there. We're in either two places. Our mind is not here. It's not now here having a conversation with you. My mind is here. I can't be doing two things at a time. While talking to you, I'm here, but I cannot be thinking of some past pain because I'm making myself consciously being here.
And would you say, going back to early on when we were discussing the hypnotherapy, that is the false kind of narrative out there, that were we having this conversation, I can totally say the same as myself, that I'm not thinking ahead, I'm not thinking behind, I'm literally right here with you. That is the state of hypnosis, I suppose, being
This
in that moment.
the state of hypnosis is being present, but going back and reviewing a scene from the past and understanding what happened
Okay.
to realize, okay, now I get it. I picked up this belief when I was X number of years, and I can see how it's played out in my life today, my presenting problem today. I can see how this is connected. And people think that you're going to go back and you're going to relive the pain. It's not reliving the pain, but you are reviewing it. Imagine like you're reviewing it on a TV screen. So you're not physically getting emotional, but there are times when there are some really deep trauma where the client will kind of dance around. And it's been where then we go into multiple sessions to understand where it's so painful that your subconscious is trying to refrain from you to actually reviewing that scene. So that's when we go into multiple sessions to understand and unpack this thing that's been holding you back. When you review it, you understand it, you can see the links to your current day situation. And then the moment you have that awareness, you can actually start catching yourself. Because um, one of my actually 2 weeks ago, a client of mine had a challenge with feeling stuck. And meaning stuck, meaning she didn't leave the house, couldn't hold a job, couldn't do, um, just stuck in life. And it was like really long periods of depression. So in our sessions, when we do the 2-hour session, then I will also give the client a recording, a personal recording for them to hear for a minimum of 21 days. I would say go longer, but the
What's that
minimum.
recording? Sorry.
So it's like a recording that we regress them back into. So 70% of the work is done within that actual session of 2 hours. Then the remaining 30% is hardwiring the beliefs and setting it back is the remaining 30% of you actually listening to the recording. It's a personalized recording, rewiring the new beliefs about yourself.
Is it something you have recorded, or is like the
No, I
conversation they
record.
had?
I record separately.
A separate, so it's a like individual recording
Yes.
for
Each
them.
client will get their own recording. It's
Oh
tailor
wow!
made
And it's like
to,
2 hours long.
no. So the recording will go between 15 to 18 minutes.
Okay.
So depending if the client wants music or they don't want music, they will get the recording the night of. The day, if they had the session during the day, they'll get it that night for them to listen to a minimum of 21 days. Or please listen to as long as you want. Or sometimes you say, you know what, I've done it for 21 days, I'm good. A week later, you'll feel like, actually, no, I do want to listen to that again. So that's what each client will get. But this particular client, when she was listening to the recording, her body started shaking, like feeling very jumpy.
Mm.
And then she's like, no, she was able to catch the mind saying, I know what you're doing. We want to go back to what's safe, what's familiar. So you want to keep me in the pain. And me listening to the recording is going to get me out of it. So I will try to do things to stop you from listening to the recording. So when it started getting jumpy, then she kept at it. Then all of a sudden, her body started just getting itchy, just itchy. Like she couldn't stay still because in the recording, you're meant to be kind of this, you regress back, you're usually sitting down and you're listening. So she couldn't keep still because her subconscious was trying to hold her back into what's familiar, which was her pain. And the itchiness, so she messaged me saying, listen, I am just getting itchy. That's sorry, she didn't message me. She had a conversation with me on our follow up. But then when she had told me she was getting these jumpy feelings, I had asked her to just do it as a walking. So don't sit, listen to the recording as you walk. And that seemed to stop the itchiness or the jumpy feeling. And then she listened to it and it shifted. And sometimes the the change is not some automatic. Sometimes it can be instant. Sometimes it's retroactive. And sometimes it's so gradual that you don't even realize that you're not doing that thing anymore. So clients have different ways of where change comes. Sometimes I've had a client who, after 6 months, her conscious thing was saying, no, it didn't work, it didn't work. Then after 6 months, she's like, you know, actually now I'm thinking about it, when you ask me that, I actually don't do that anymore. So she didn't even notice it. It was so gradual. But she never started doing that thing that she was doing to hurt herself.
How do you get people to open up to all of this? Because I feel like it's such an intimate relationship that they must have to develop with you to be able to all of it to work. And going day to day life, you're just rushing between day one, day two, Mondays and Fridays, and all of that. It takes. Do you think it takes? Is this? You said it's therapy is for everyone. Um, how do you identify the people like? Do you, because I'm thinking that do they really have to be at the higher end of like definitely thinking, oh, I have a problem with this? A lot of people just go about their life thinking I don't have a problem at all. Actually, they do. They're just like we discuss about the self worth thing.
Yeah.
How would you communicate to those people, the people who they might have just heard this conversation for the first time in their life? And I'm gonna put another sort of thing on like between men and women. I believe that us guys that it's traditionally we're just very reserved. Opening up feels like, and I think it's a lot of these days. I think it's a lot of work being done on that, and I think which is really good. And I speak to sort of my friends, and I think it's more to do with the fact that we within our peers we would feel like, oh, like he's just a wimpy kid, like he's doing all of that. And I think again the self-worth part kicks in that among my peers I don't want to be considered less, So if all of them are like strong, like hunky dudes, and like we don't do all of that stuff, we not we yeah we don't open up. Ho- Yeah, and that's like 50% of the world is one gender, and then that's the other side. On the other side with women, how would you say that? Yeah, how would you get someone to open up to all of this?
I would ask them, what's your internal dialogue? Do you have an inner voice that questions or holds you back or puts you in a place? Some of the harshest words we'll hear are the words we say to ourselves. Do you have that? Are you constantly calling yourself names that you wouldn't even say that to someone who you didn't like? Those are the harsh words that you would call, that you call to yourself. Or is your internal dialogue thinking, it's just not available to me. I'm just different. Or maybe I'm just not fit for this. That internal dialogue is sometimes the start of an awareness that when you think, this is just how my life is, you know, married, children, work, and then whatever happens with work and life, that's it. But then what's that internal conversation that you have? And do you feel you're living your purpose? And sometimes people may not understand that purpose, but your purpose doesn't have to be your full time job. Your full time job can be what, you know, brings the livelihood of how you pay the rent, mortgage, whatever. But are you doing something that truly is what you want to do? And usually that purpose comes from, what did you enjoy doing between the ages of 7 and 14? 7 is when you first realize who you are in this world and you pick up what it is that you actually like. And 14 is when the world has snatched it out of you because you needed to conform to what the world needs you to be. But if you can go back to that, and that could be anything, I loved being in nature. I loved dancing. I loved climbing trees. You don't have to go and start climbing trees, but you can do something of your purpose that is with nature, doing something, and then have your regular job, but you're fulfilling your purpose and you're not feeling this lack. You're connected. You start feeling fulfilled because you understand what your purpose is. And I feel like if someone is not ready, like when clients come to me, I'll usually ask them, is this a now problem? If it's not a now problem, then come back when you're ready. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're not like a 9 and 10, you're not ready. Then you'll be wasting your time and money for something that won't work. But when people say, I can't live like this anymore, with this either internal chatter or this constant emotional pain, be it depression or any other things of that we would consider mental health, and it's draining the life out of them, that's a now problem. And when it's a now problem, we're ready to go and flip it back to how you were meant to be.
That's amazing. See, I'm just thinking like you saying such profound and deep things that I'm gonna listen to this podcast again myself and literally really ponder over those things because there is really you ask some really great, amazing questions. How does one even get into this world, in the world of the RTT? Because I think this it feels like it's a very structured layout of work that you have. There's session, introductory sessions, discovery calls, and all of that. I'm assuming there's some training involved before you can even do that for someone else.
Yes.
How does that work out? How does one get into this?
So I trained in person with Marissa Pure. So RTT is her brand of how hypnotherapy should be. It it's called Rapid Transformational Therapy because it's not, let's go and dig up something from your past and then leave you to be in it. without for you to actually see a closure on understanding how you are today. And usually, depending on how deep the trauma is, it can be within 1 to 3, if not 4 or 5 sessions, until the person feels like, and it's not necessary that if the first session is on not feeling good enough, that the second session is on that. The second session only comes up when the client comes back and says, I now need to see my money problems.
How much that brings up? I mean, I feel like they say money is the root of all evil and that kind of
Like
stuff.
my relationship with money. How did you
Yeah.
see money? Well, where did that come from?
Does
Or
that comes up quite often, the money question?
I would it's more of the self-worth. So the money gets associated to, if I have it, I have self-worth. If I'm able to obtain and buy things, I have self-worth. So in order to buy these things, you need the money.
Yeah.
But it's not. I've only had one client who say, "I just can't keep money. I I have it in the bank, and I'm so used to seeing no money
Mm.
that when I get the money in the bank, I will make sure that it brings back to being no money." And
That's
it's
such a sabotage.
yeah, but you're going back to what's familiar, even though it sounds so crazy. But all it like we all know now that your brain's priority is to keep you safe. And if safe means keeping
Yeah.
you what's familiar, even though it's painful for you, I'll keep you safe because that's my priority.
Which is this is such a profound kind of work. And does your work overlap with the world of kind of like psychiatry and psychology? Um, because that it feels like a lot. There is sort of kind of deeper tapping into that. And in my head at the moment, the Netflix documentary Studs is playing up, where Jonah Hill, the very famous actor, he made a documentary. It's just him and his psychiatrist, and they're talking about and again all the things that you've been saying. The themes are running in my head at the moment. That Jonah was fat chubby kid when he was growing up, and his mom used to always like get thin, get lean, and all of that. And he made a huge career out of it as an actor, as a comedian, and writer, director, all those things. But he never got into a stable kind of a relationship. And I'm kind of oversimplifying what I remember of hearing it. And then the psychiatrist told him that perhaps it has something to do that Jonah told his psychiatrist actually that it after the discovery, as just like we had such a quick session like here, it became the fact that because the closest woman to his life was his mother, and she was just not accepting of who he was in his body image, that sabotaged his relationship with other women. And to me, when I saw that documentary, that's when the switch flipped for me. That I'll be very honest with you, we've at Oxford Talks we've done a lot of these personal development category of work, and I always used to curate with a lot of skepticism. And I think it was the speaker during the curation session, speakers could hear that maybe he's not believing of the work that we're doing. And I think it's nothing to do, it was just some people think from their kind of like a maths brain, like a logic brain, they think creatively. And I'm definitely falling into that category, that if I cannot place it in a box, and that goes back to the entrepreneurship thing, that entrepreneurs tend to be a bit more assertive and more on the controlling side of things, because everything else in their world is uncontrollable. They have no idea what's going to go on, so they try to control, like, let's put things in a box because okay, I'll be calm when if it's in a box. And that sort of plays out in in their bigger life. And after I saw that documentary, then I realized that, oh, the skepticism is not really real. These are things people go through. And I thought, I'll be extremely honest here, I thought it was kind of like a wishy-washy woohoo science, like it's like you go to like palmists, and like if you, and they like read your hand, and I thought it was part of that category. But I think by seeing Jonah saying all of those words, made me realize, oh my God, like you can be a very successful person in your job, and still at the end of it, you have all the money in the world, but you think you need someone to go through the pains that you had before. And that made me realize, okay, I think there might be more and more people that in the way we see the world, they might look like perfectly fine people. They're successful, huge cars, great family, da 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 da, da, all of those material things you can think of. But deep down, that might be going through, and that's what immediately sort of draw the attention that yes, let's do more of these kind of person development talks in that category. That you never know who's going to be reaching out, and for us to unlock that behavior in someone's brain through through the work that you're doing, through the talks that you've done, would have been really sort of helpful to other people. But in terms of kind of your work, I think you've gone through the training, you've gone through, now you're in the phase that you are actively working with a lot of clients, but I'm assuming that's not how life was for you.
No. So
When did that change happen? How do you decide that this is something you want to do?
my background is international business. So I deal with trade agreements. And that was my life for a very long period of my life until we started having challenges of starting a family. And it started to dawn upon me year after year that suppose we can't. What happens then? Like, I believe in a higher being, and I believe that God did not, it's not the end of someone's life or what they think of themselves should they not be able to have children. And it was that internal emotional pain that pushed me to stop running to please, because then I started questioning, well, why do I want a child? And I like, is it because I'm fulfilling the duty? Is it because my identity will then become from a wife to a mother and I want to be called a mother? Um, like there were lots of thoughts running through my mind until I needed to just pause. And it was a very hard pause to stop and start thinking, what was my worth? Is my worth only associated to being called a mother or saying, yes, I have kids? Um, and that was my first step towards understanding my self-worth and started to unpack and peel off the layers that were not mine. And it was not some overnight thing. It took, and still is, a journey of peeling off stuff that shows up in my life that I'm like, hey, hold on a minute. I thought I dealt with you. I dealt with you when I dealt with that in like belief. But they're like, I recently heard Eric Edmeades kind of used, in the movie Matrix, where
Ah,
the agents kind of just show up
I
and they
just saw it
morph.
last night,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
That's so
Well,
funny you brought that up.
you know how the agents kind of just show
I
up?
remember, yeah, yeah.
So I find that this not enoughness in my life shows up as an agent into some other category of my life that I didn't even expect it to come there. But then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I killed you. I
Yeah.
killed you when I dealt with my self worth about being a mother, but it showed up again on me being a therapist. And it was like these little agents just popping up. And then you're constantly having to kill them. But then I had to realize, like, oh, hold on. There is no destination. It's a constant journey for me to come to enoughness. And I still am on this journey of I don't have it all figured out. I still have these agents pop up. And it's not, I don't think I will ever have that, hey, all my agents will never come again and I'm done with it. Possibly not. But I have a hell of a much more understanding of where my mind can take me and how I can observe my mind and not be my mind. And when you start becoming the observer, you can almost see what the mind is trying to do. And I don't know how we got to this question, how we came around here.
You mentioning that you had a different career before,
Oh, yes.
and then
So
you
it
wanted
was
to, yeah.
it was pain. Pain took me on a path of understanding who I was, my self worth. And then when I realized, if I was living like this, how is everybody else living? Are they all looking and being fine? Like, and when I started to see that, no, it was sometimes a facade. Like people were just wearing masks to kind of present themselves to the outside world. And that internally there was pain. And that pain can be just loneliness. It can be depression, but I'm putting up a face, or whatever it is that people are going through. Then I realized that if I'm able to help myself, then why can I not tell people you don't need to live this way? Like, we have two lives, and the second starts when you realize that. So, why? If we don't need to live in emotional pain, why do we think we're destined to do it and just be that way?
But yeah, what are you trying to achieve in the world with all of this?
I'm trying to help people live the life they were meant to be with who they were meant to be. Because when you start living with purpose of who you are with self worth, you then have already kind of filled your own glass. And when I'm operating from a filled glass, I'm now dealing with my partner very differently. I'm dealing with my kids differently. I'm dealing with my outside environment differently. So it's almost like a domino effect. So if I help, say, a husband or a wife to fill their own glass up with for themselves and realize their self-worth, it's a domino effect because then they start kind of dealing with people differently. And when the relationship between two partners, because they've now understood their self-worth, are better, they create a better environment for the kids. And when the kids have a better environment, they treat people in their school differently.
That's really good. But yeah, I'm gonna flip the switch and come back to you. What if you fail to do your job, or that particular interaction with, let's say, a client doesn't turn out to be as productive? Then do you question your self-worth again after that?
I've been going through training to become a clinical hypnotherapist. And this very much entails being more of a holistic. So I'm looking at now different aspects. I'm not only looking at you've come to me um, for you, maybe you're having depression, episodes of depression. I'm not only looking at that, I'm looking at all other categories of your life to see what else can we bring in to lift you up. So it's not a let me go and give you something to fix one issue, but I'm not bothered about other stuff. So I feel like when you try and provide a client with other categories of their life and lift them up, something has to shift.
What if it doesn't?
If it doesn't, the awareness has been seeded in. I've planted a seed. And that seed will grow. You can't unlearn that awareness now. When I've now made you attuned to listening to some voice in your head, you can't now stop listening to that because you're now attuned to hearing it.
Sounds like hypnotherapy.
You know what I mean?
As in you,
If I'm
I'm
not shed
trying.
light, you cannot unsee it. You have to see it.
That's true. That's so true. I'm trying to get to a point where I'm thinking of like such a like a block of a person, individual who's just not receptive. It might be open to the first part, but I think that just kills the point. But let's say it's an absolutely brick of a person. They just don't have any emotions whatsoever, and you feel like, you're locked up in a room, and your whole thing is, Wajeeha, you'll only get out of the room if that person, gets resolved their issue, and you have failed. That's what I'm trying to reach at. That are you still the person you said you went through a phase of questioning that self worth, and does how much your work does now constitute that part of it? That if you fail, I mean, what you just described to me, it feels like an attempt to not fail.
Hmm.
That going a holistic approach. I'm trying to get that. Even then, let's say, for some reason you do fail, would it go back to you, or just like myself, you have started developing these frameworks to just to hide from it? Yeah.
I have two things. I can't work with a client who's not ready to work. So if you're not ready to work and work on yourself, then you're not ready. So I can't work on that.
Hmm.
But if you're 100% ready, and I feel like whatever I've done hasn't shifted anything, I will then either I will have to tell myself that I've done the best I can. However, I do have other people who can support you further. But I feel like the idea of, what a crap therapist was I. I wasn't able to shift that. That idea has not kind of come into my mind. But I do feel a responsibility of, I'm going to do my level best to support you in this journey to unpacking whatever happened to you. And if I feel at one point that this is now going beyond my scope, then I have resources to pull in to help support you further. But it also comes down to the client. If you're not ready, then no matter what degree of of a therapist you get, it won't work if you're not ready.
Yeah, you just mentioned that you will refer the person to someone else, and that immediately took me the thought of like a community around. I think your community, your friends and colleagues, they give you a bit more confidence that with them you can have tackle an issue or a client's particular issue with a very holistic with a very big group of expertise. But taking that community factor to external our day-to-day lives, what would be your kind of small word of commentary on what's the state of the world is at the moment? Especially talking about, like, the wars going on all around, and if it feels there are more things which are making us anxious. More people are COVID was good when people touched back with families, but I think now we are kind of back into where we were roughly before. Especially in a city like London, it's a very come and go kind of a city.
Mhm.
There's not like enough family. There's not enough communities. The communities you might have might be like your tennis groups, but people change, in that all the time as well. In your observance, what is the state of like our modern day communities? What is happening to them?
I feel like we're very much alone. We don't, if we don't actually work on building my own community, I will be alone. And yes, there's very much on have your own space and I love that too. But if I'm not connected to people, we're meant to be social animals. And if I feel like it doesn't just happen, a community this around you doesn't happen unless you work it. You will work to, you will go and work at an office because you have to and you'll get along with those people because you have to. I will need to create my own community of friends and I have to work on that community, that they are my community, my people. And it doesn't have to be some dozen people, even if it's 2 to 3 people, that's my community. That when things are going off, they're the people to root me over saying, you're going to be okay. You got this. And that community, as much as I would love it for it to be in person, sometimes it doesn't happen. But then I would have to work it that we meet, be it twice a year, 3 times a year, once a year, whatever is possible, but to maintain that connection. Um, my mom grew up with 101 first cousins. That's Crazy.
Say that again. 101
One first cousins. So that means they had, I think they had 13, her father,
sibling. Oh yeah,
sibling, and each of them had another, like lots of kids.
that's a,
So they got 101 first cousins.
wow.
And they were not like far off in age, like 2 years apart, one in whatever. Of course, birth control was not something back then. So they were had, so my mom always told us that you don't need friends. And we would always, with growing up, was like having friends was, you don't need it. You don't need it. Because she didn't feel that she needed it, because she had all these cousins and they were the friends and that was it. So we didn't understand the importance of friendship and building like a community of friends. That was something we had to learn from the outside. It wasn't displayed at home and it wasn't valued as much. It was the idea of blood is thicker than water. I don't know if you've heard that saying.
That's the first one, but I
Okay.
see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I became an adult and started realizing I do need my network. I do need my people. I can't only rely on my siblings because I'm five, four girls and one brother. There was a point when I didn't even speak to my siblings because we were always constantly fighting. I had to have my own people and it wasn't valued. And I feel I didn't learn this understanding of building my community until adulthood and working on it and realizing that it is important. My community is not only limited to family. There could be people in my community who I'm not even related to, but they're my people.
Is it like you share like a common thing, for example, like you do an activity or anything like that that builds it up?
Activity or just speaking my raw emotions. And the more I do it and do it in front of my community, the more it's given them the permission to say, you know what, I feel like crap. Like this is what I was going through, and I'm feeling really charged right now. It's a window. And to be honest, this community cannot be my partner because he also needs his own community that he needs to take out and say his stuff. Yes, it's not to say that I'm going to hide stuff from him,
Yeah.
but my community is not my husband. This is my community where I feel like I can connect and just tell you what I'm struggling with and tell you, you know what, I got a win today, or I struggled with today with this. I heard this on the news today and I felt like this. This made me feel like. So we started this thing where every time we meet, you need to say one thing you're struggling with.
Wow.
And sometimes what comes up to me, it may not be I don't even see it as a struggle, but to the other person, it is clearly a struggle because we both have a very different map of the world. We grew up from different backgrounds, different areas, our families. So what I'm thinking is like, what do you mean? That's a struggle? I can't. It's like everyone's trauma is different. So I find the idea of community is not something that just happens. You need to work it. And it's not it's like Trevor Noah was saying in one of his podcasts that you build, you go and you work on relationship therapy, how to be better with your partner, how to be better with your kids, but you have nothing to tell you how to be better with friends.
That's true. It always seems like a commoditization of kind of friendship that you. I mean, I'm just looking back in my life. The friend groups have always been, or we just do this activity all the time regularly, and we go to school. So we all go to school as friends. We play cricket, or that's our friends, or we do this thing together. And I think it's which is I think it's a kind of like a line between like a very close friends. I think that's, as you mentioned, that people you can just sit with and be like, I'm just struggling with this. I think that is a very close friend group. And I think when you move places, you move cities or countries and all of that, that, as you said, like, you know, you try to make an effort to connect and all of that. But a
Yeah.
lot of people, assume, I don't know, my view of life is just very much like London, and I think London is very much like come and go city. But at the same time, I do feel that that is what's kind of missing a lot. And I think you kind of miss that more and more as you go further in life, that other things start somehow, they fit. And when you're 18, you're anxious about like, oh, I'm gonna get a job, I'm gonna get my life sorted out. But as you head towards a bit more later stage in life, and it can be, and again, as you said, like you attach your self-worth to that, because your job gives you that comfortableness, that perhaps now I can reconnect with my friends. But the
Mm.
moment your job is at danger or whatever, your friends are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna postpone that engagement because I need to focus on this thing. So I think I think it's not really being pessimistic, but at the same time, I think a lot of people, what I really love about the state of the world, and I think not coming from like a huge commentary perspective, but it's just that we've been doing what we've been doing with Oxford Talks for such a long time. It kind of gave us like a front row seat to a lot of world phenomena. You speak to so many people from all over the world,
Mm.
that it kind of gives you like a general perspective. And what, in my sort of personal observance, what I really love what the world is heading towards is that the information age is kind of being converted into the knowledge age. I feel like a lot of people are very much interested in health. They're very much interested in getting themselves better, mentally speaking and physically, and all of those things. Which perhaps, I don't know. I'm not saying that I'm super old in that regard, but even when we were growing up, you can just see in like through sports as well. There's more athleticism, which is being just naturally instilled in sports recently, because there's just more data available. You can do this and all of that, which I absolutely love. Even now, I'm wearing these like these rings to help calculate. Did I sleep properly? Did I do all of that? Growing up, I didn't have that, and look at these companies. They, most of them were not around 10 years ago, so I feel
Mm.
like that's really good. And but at the same time, I guess the people need guides like yourself, who can, yes, this data and all of these things are great, but some things are not going to be answered by GPT anytime soon. A lot of them are going to be not going to be answered by Google anytime soon. I think that human to human connection, that openness, is still what's needed. And that brings me to the question that and we've, I felt like this podcast has been like kind of like a deep session into what happens in a sort of a conversation with you.
Mm.
If someone wants to reach out to you, Vijay, what would be the best way to reach out to you?
Um, Connect with me on LinkedIn or book a free discovery call through my website. That
Amazing.
would be it.
And Vijay, we have this tradition on the pod that we ask the guests that what is that one book that changed their life? What we're going to be doing is we're going to be buying that book, Audible, whatever it is, giving to a member, an audience, and help you connect with that member as well.
Oh,
Um, so, what would be that one book that changed your life?
The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Okay.
Um, he said something in there that planted a seed for me. The past cannot survive in your presence. And that awareness itself was like an aha moment for me. And it changed the way I started to reflect on things when things happened or when I was sitting by myself. I would be able to, when I was present, like now, the past can't survive, nor can some future worry. And I feel like when I'm feeling anxious about something, I just need to come down to the now. So the power of now is what instilled or was the seed to further understand my mind. So
Yeah,
yeah,
what a beautiful thing to say, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for. I will always say this. Thank you so much for your courage, because we worked together for a very long time. I think what you have gone through and the arc of your life has been very courageous. I have a lot of people who they see the talks of you, especially. They say, we want our talk to look like Vijaya," and I was like, "But your story is not like Vijaya." And that courage that you had in your life, I think that's what's needed in the world. And I've said that to you multiple times as well. But thank you so much for being on the pod. It was a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much.
thank you.